We're out and about in Aberystwyth today, around town, looking at the many changing faces of Aberystwyth station on the Vale of Rheidol Railway. We'll be going through the 4 different termini that the railway has had over the years in chronological order, starting off right here at this very ordinary looking bit of fence. This here is where the buffer stops were for the original Aberystwyth station that opened with the rest of the railway in December 1902. And that big gable, the house there that was built a couple of years after the railway opened, was plastered with all sorts of publicity material, posters inspired by advertising in Switzerland, which the railway company used to market Devil's Bridge to the tourists. So everybody who would have come down Smithfield Road here would have been met with all of the publicity for the railway all over the house gable there. And right in front of me, the door to James Rees's office, the original manager, the general manager of the railway. And we'll go into where the station was now. And here we are at the entrance gates, or what used to be the entrance gates. There was a huge wooden sign about 10 feet up saying Devil's Bridge Railway, and everybody would have walked in through here, past the office, and were practically on the platform. We're standing right next to where the main line would have been, a passing loop on this side, and the station building, which was virtually identical to the one that we've got at Devil's Bridge that survives, would have been right here across the way. Booking office and waiting room. No raised platform as such, all on ground level. So all that's missing are the buildings and the track, and here's our station. We're now standing at the other end, the up end of the station site. This is where we have a photo of number 8, I think it is, with the train of carriages ready to leave in the 1920s or 30s, with these houses actually being built in the background. This fence has an interesting little story. Since it's here, we may as well talk about it. When the second Aberystwyth station was built, we'll get to that later, it was further in that direction. This fence was actually constructed in the 30s following the line of the main line, if you like, leaving Aberystwyth, when the old goods yard section on the other side was converted into the Crossville bus depot. So this fence here, even though there's no railway here now, it curves around and it's following the line of the railway, where the railway track used to go. This was the site of the junction for the main line. Here's our fence coming around, leaving Aberystwyth station onto the riverbank, and the short stub that went into the locomotive depot, and right in the early years of the railway, the harbour branch. That's a story for another day. But right now, where those 2 semi-detached blue houses are, is where the original engine sheds were situated, and these were used right up until 1968. So not all that long ago. Next location, sandwiched in between Matalan and Pets at Home. However, this was the second terminus of the Vale of Rheidol Railway in Aberystwyth, and I'm standing pretty much where the engine would have stood, waiting to leave for Devil's Bridge every day between 1926 and 1968. The only thing we've got here for reference is this little white building here, which you can see in historic photos, normally behind the train, looking at it from a passenger's point of view. You can even see our new carriage shed. Well, I say new, 2020. That's our carriage shed right there. So what the point of this second station was to bring the Vale of Rheidol Railway's terminus in closer to the main line. Have to remember that in 1923, the Great Western had not only built 3 new engines for the Vale, but was also looking at incorporating it into their mainline network. And to do that, to complement the brand new mainline terminus here, 1926, they extended the Vale of Rheidol across the main road from the original station, around the corner and into the new station, which was pretty much from here to the carriage shed. We'll go have a closer look now. We're now standing at pretty much where the back of the train would have been for people coming from the mainline station round the corner, and this is where the back of the train would have stood with the engine, like we said just before, up there by Pets at Home, ready to depart. This whole area was known as Smithfield Square, used to be a farmer's market, and later turned into part of the Vale of Rheidol second terminus. However, we're now going to look at the third terminus, post-1968. a familiar sight, the mainline station here at Aberystwyth. The orange brick section is the original Cambrian station, whereas the more imposing edifice at the front there is the Great Western addition from 1925. The third Vale of Rheidol station was right up here. Where we've just come from, the alleyway there, that's our 1925 second station we've just been looking at. So it really wasn't a huge change of location when the railway was moved in 1968. However, the reason behind that requires us to look a little bit into the purpose and role played by the mainline railway here in Aberystwyth. You see, places like this would never have become the huge tourist destinations they became during the Edwardian period without the Victorian railway entrepreneurs. The main line here from the direction of Shrewsbury arrived in Aberystwyth in 1864, and later, 1867, the Manchester and Milford Railway came up from the direction of Carmarthen. This bay platform that remains here from the 1920s, when this section was reconfigured, when Beeching infamously closed the railway, the Manchester and Milford Railway, to Carmarthen in 1965, this was then used to house the Vale of Rheidol, and the tracks were moved from that side of the wall, plonked them down on this side, and the entire section through the original station round by the river was lifted, and the present course of the railway was used, basically straight out of town, and that's what we use today. And here we are, the 2019 and still used, hopefully the last, Aberystwyth station. You can see where we've come from, our carriage shed down there, that's the 1968 site, so basically we've moved our operations down here to be more central, closer to the car park, museum, workshop, and new shop and cafe buildings as well. So we've brought the whole thing together, and it makes a nice fitting end for this little tour of various Vale of Rheidol destinations around Aberystwyth. For joining us again today. Be sure to like and subscribe and follow us on all of our social media, and we'll see you again soon.